Hey there, everybody, and welcome back to the Return to Base podcast. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about mindfulness, meditation, and badass Navy SEAL shit with former Navy SEAL Jon Macaskill, who is also the co-host of the Men Talking Mindfulness Podcast. So stay tuned.
Bravo Zulu, this is Victor Lima. We are RTB. This is Return to Base, a VeteranLife podcast.
Welcome back to the Return to Base podcast brought to you by VeteranLife. I'm here today with a great guest, Jon Macaskill, former Navy SEAL and the co-host of the Men Talking Mindfulness Podcast. How's it going, Jon?
It's going well, Cliff. How you doing?
Not too bad. For those out there in the world, this is like media magic. You'll probably hear this in February sometime, but this is January 4th now. So Happy New Year, Jon, and hope your holidays and everything went well.
Yeah, thanks, brother. Yeah, it was it was a funny holiday season. I actually went to the Army Navy game on December 11th. With a bunch of Army guys. So I was severely outnumbered, but we ended up winning that one. But I got COVID from I think 16 or 17 of us in that group ended up with COVID, and it put me down pretty hard. I mean, certainly not as bad as it could have been. But I was in bed and isolated. I have an RV, the recreational vehicle, and I isolated in there for about 2.5 weeks. It was super boring.
Wow.
But I didn't want my family to get it. And you know, it was some forced downtime, because I have a way of even if I schedule downtime on my calendar, I have a way of filling it up with stuff. And it was probably a good thing that I had forced downtime, but I was back up and partially running for Christmas and New Year's, so it was a good break. Yeah,
you heard it here, folks. Blame the Navy. Blame the Navy beat me. I think if Army won, it probably would have been a different story. But
I think because Army didn't win, they felt the need to give me COVID.
That must have been what it was.
My brother-in-law, who's Army. Yeah, he calls that new variant what is it, Omicron?
Omicron or whatever.
Yeah, he calls it Armycron.
Armycron. Yeah. So Jon Macaskill got the Armycron variant. He's probably patient number 0. And the Army Navy game is a super spreader event, but probably well worth it.
It was.
Hopefully everybody else who was on your ship recovered well, or
I think
did everybody feel it?
Yeah. It was funny, man. We had this massive text going back and forth about who had it and what the different symptoms that were going on were. And everybody's back up. I mean, it's, there's still some lingering after effects, some fatigue and some brain fog, but for the most part, pretty close to 100%. Maybe my voice is a little bit scratchy, but other than that, I'm feeling pretty good.
Somehow I've avoided the COVID.
Yeah.
However, my wife just tested positive not too long ago.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But she had no symptoms. So
wow.
It kind of ruined our Christmas plans and stuff like that. But somehow my children and I didn't test positive ever. So
there you go.
I hope she doesn't mind me talking about it. We'll find out.
Maybe get edited out later.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to edit that out. But yeah, so as mentioned, Jon was a Navy SEAL and served at an integral part of our country's history. Definitely all through the GY era from, you said 96 to 2000, right?
96 to 2020.
Oh, sorry, 2020. Yes. So obviously during that time period, things got busy. It's interesting though, because when you joined, there wasn't a whole lot going on. I mean,
definitely compared to
the Balkans.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Same for me. I joined in 98 and I got sent to Germany for a little while, and right up until 9/11, it was a peace. It was a peace army, People were getting sent to Kosovo and stuff. I never got to go, but you could definitely tell let's just say shining our boots and pressing our uniforms was of utmost importance during that time period.
Right. I remember those days.
Right. When you're not deploying, and then finally somebody had the smarts to, well, they gave us in the Army, they gave us like the world's worst uniform, but they also gave us the tan boots that we didn't have to shine.
Boots, so
we appreciated that. But yeah, it's something else going from a peacetime military or even low level conflict type military to the full war machine of the United States military almost overnight, right? Was that your experience?
Yeah, man. I was in BUDS when the planes hit the towers and the Pentagon. And I remember very specifically, one of our instructors, he pulled the entire class out on the beach, actually several classes all lined up side by side. And there he stood up on this black platform, and he addressed all of us. So at the time, so let's see, I was not classed up. I was at BUDS, but hadn't officially started. I didn't start until January of 2002 as a class, but I was doing what's called pre-training or pre-training rest and recovery, PTR&R, but whatever. The classes were out there on the beach, and this instructor stands up on, after we had already seen what had happened. We knew what was going on, and everybody was trying to jump on our cell phones and call home and call New York City to see if our loved ones that were there were injured or part of this whole thing. And we couldn't get through, just like everyone else was doing at the same time, which is why we couldn't get through. But this instructor is like, this is probably the turning point or the major turning point for us as a military and us as special operations. And he compared it to Pearl Harbor and how Pearl Harbor had brought us into World War II, and that this was going to bring us into what he thought was going to be America's longest war. And, this is 9/11, 2001.
Clairvoyant.
Exactly. Right. And here we are 20 years plus later. And, we're still fighting it in one form or another. So yeah, he was spot on. It was absolutely a turning point. And I knew then, that my career in special operations was going to be vastly different than some of my predecessors who had, brought me into special operations.
Right.
Like you mentioned, they'd been in Kosovo and the Balkans and some of the other places, but certainly not what we've seen over the last 20 years.
Yeah. So what were you doing before you went to BUDS? You mentioned you were enlisted before.
Yeah. So I was enlisted in the Navy. I enlisted as a parachute rigger, and then served just shy of a year as an enlisted guy. Got picked up to go from the enlisted ranks to the Naval Academy. Graduated in class of 2001 and went straight to SEAL training as an officer, junior officer. And then, and literally, so May 2001, graduated the Naval Academy in SEAL training, and at least the pre-training part of BUDS in September. And then September 11th happened. And then the rest of the world changed.
Yeah. Your instructor, or what do you call it? Cadre.
Yeah. Buzz instructor. Yeah. He was a chief. Yep.
He was spot on. Probably that was the nicest he was to you the entire time.
Yeah.
Now get back in the water.
Exactly.
Right. So how was your BUDS experience? Were you what you thought true blue, or did you have any setbacks?
Yeah, I did. So I was there in September, like I said, and I was supposed to class up with class 238 in October, and I did class up with them. But I did something stupid. I went out from the Naval Academy, where you party a little bit, but you don't party as hard as you could.
You don't party like Tijuana.
Yeah, exactly. So I went out to San Diego. I was still young and dumb. Now I'm just old and dumb, but I was young and dumb, and I partied entirely too hard initially on the weekends. And so when I classed up with class 238, I had pneumonia, and literally made it through about 75% of the first day. And then was out on the obstacle course on the slide for life. Ended up, because of the pneumonia, my fatigue just wore me out, and I fell off the slide for life, basically sand darted into the ground. And one of the instructors came up, and I was spitting up blood, and ended up getting rolled from class 238 to 239, which started in January of 2002. And that was my class. So I started with 239 and went all the way through with 239, although I'd gotten rolled after one day of 238. So I don't really count 238 as my class, just because I only did one day. But
you didn't even know those guys.
Yeah, exactly. I knew my Naval Academy classmates that were in my class, but I don't remember many guys from that class, one or two. Anyway, we had a crazy cold hell week. It was one of the,
I was going to say, you started at it's never a good time to start.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah,
January is probably the worst.
Right. It's either really cold and you've got really long nights, and the waves are really big. That's the winter classes. Or the summer classes are just physically beaten down, just because the instructors have to kind of beat you down because the waves are smaller, it's warmer. So it really depends on what time of year you go through, what type of torture you're going to get. Yeah. But yeah, ended up going through Hell Week in February of 2002. And it was one of the coldest Hell Weeks on record. It actually snowed, and I'm not kidding. It literally did snow in San Diego during our Hell Week. And the instructors all said, "Hey, we ordered this weather for you guys." It was fun. But all in all, looking back on it 20 years later or so, actually about 20 years almost to the day now, since I classed up, it was a lot of fun going through it when you look back on it. Right. And I'm sure when you look back on your time in the service, you remember the high points. You don't remember too many of the low points. And it was brutal and it was miserable, but looking back on it, I remember laughing a lot. I remember looking to my left and right, knowing that after Hell Week, the guys that you go through the rest of the training with, you have a lot of fun with, and you're brothers. So I still stay in contact with many of the guys that I was in buds with. So it's nice. It was a good time.
Yeah, you mentioned it's one of those things where you say you remember the highs. I kind of look at it like the lows become the highs, and then the highs become almost like higher background. I don't even remember. I don't really remember too much of the quote unquote good times or the mundane. It seems that in my memory, it's all the stuff that sucked.
You're right. The stuff that sucked, now we can all get together and laugh about it. Right.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I think one of my instructors at one point, we were done and getting our counselings, and he says, "Hey, that sucked, right?" And I was like, Yeah, that sucked. And he said, "You're welcome, because you're going to remember that. And this is probably going to be, you're going to look back and it's going to be a fond memory." And he was right. But luckily I was able to make it through. A lot of people, for some reason, were dropping like flies in North Carolina during that summer. And
dude, North Carolina in the summer, man. I've been there.
Yeah. My lip has a tendency to start getting numb. My face feels kind of tingly. And I know, I'm like, oh man, I'm in trouble. But luckily, I don't know, by the grace of God, I was able to make it through. So the rest of your career, from going to buds, finishing buds, and then going off to the teams. Tell me a little bit about your experience there, and you don't have to get into anything super specific, although you would have wrote a book about it if it was very cool. Let's be honest, right?
That's right. Every SEAL has a book.
Every SEAL has a book.
At least one. all kidding aside, I am writing one, but it has nothing to do with my SEAL career, or very little to do with my SEAL career, and more to do with what I'm doing now. Graduated BUDS, that summer in 2002, went out to SEAL qualification training, or went across the street really to SEAL qualification training. So you've got BUDS on the western side of Orange. What is it? I'm going to screw it up. Orange Silver Highway. Strand. It's called the Silver Strand is the nickname for it. And then you've got the Naval Amphibious Base on the other side, and that's where SEAL qualification training is. And that's kind of like, BUDS is kind of like the rite of passage to get into SEAL qualification training. And then SEAL qualification training is, for lack of a better term, is kind of like the gentleman's course to becoming a SEAL, right? Now you've earned your right to become a SEAL. You haven't become a SEAL yet, but you've earned your right to become a SEAL. So SEAL qualification training is another 6 months where you do basically everything that you do in the SEAL teams. You do some airborne training, some maritime training, some diving, some shooting, some land navigation, some ground tactics, working together as a team, immediate action drills, everything that you kind of see a SEAL team doing. And then from there you get sent out to your SEAL teams.
Real quick, did you have to go to jump school for parachute rigging school at Fort Benning? So were you already airborne qualified?
So no, I wasn't. So parachute rigger in the Navy, what I really was, that's what it's called, PR, parachute rigger. But really the true rating is air crew survival equipment man. And so
seamstress.
Really what I worked on. Yes, exactly. Or stitch bitch is the other term for it.
Hashtag stitch bitch.
Yes.
You heard it.
Yeah. But I worked on ejection seats and survival equipment for pilots.
Okay.
So, making sure that their flares were there, their pills to clear water, some drinking water, those types of things.
Got it.
And the parachute, obviously connected to the ejection seat. So it's a little bit different than the parachute rigger in the Army, or at least the traditional parachute rigger in the Army. Some parachute riggers in the Navy go on to get qualified, and they end up normally working with the SEAL teams. Ironically, I was not qualified as a jumper when I was a parachute rigger. And then later, as I went through SEAL qualification training, this is back in the day before the Navy had our own jump school. We did have to go through Fort Benning
Army training. They called it.
Yeah, dude, I'll tell you, that was probably the hardest part. And the only reason, not physically, but dealing with the BS at Benning.
There's so much BS there.
So much, man. Like lining up on the cables at 4:30 a.m. so that you can get ready to jump at 9 a.m. Or something ridiculous. So I was like, this is ridiculous. They're
getting those guys ready for the mass exit.
Right. Oh yeah.
82nd Airborne thing.
Totally, right. I understand why they do it.
You're just like, oh my God. Oh my God.
Yeah. If I hadn't gone through BUDS and gone through, kind of hell in order to become a SEAL already, I may not have made it through that training, mostly because of the BS. So yes. And obviously that was a requirement back then to become a SEAL, was to go through airborne training at Benning. So it was you had to do it. So anyway, since then they've changed it, and the Navy has their own jump school, combined static line and free fall training. The joke is that, sure enough. The joke is that at Benning, they stuff 2 weeks of shit into a 3-week sock. Because, you easily could have gone through it in 2 weeks. And now the Navy, this is obviously, I'm biased because I'm Navy, but the Navy jump school, you get the static line and the free fall. And so you come out, a more qualified air operator
in 2 days.
Not in 2 days, but pretty quick relatively. But again, like you said, airborne is there and done that way for a reason. It's so that you can get that mass exit out, and you get tons of people qualified in that amount of time versus what we do. We get a lot fewer people qualified, but they get more training.
Well, you don't get the Army Airborne badge anymore if you go through the Navies, right? I don't know if you got to wear it on your.
Yeah, no, you get your gold jump wings now.
That's lame. I think it's a rite of passage, and I've heard about that school out of OTI. It seems like no, I'm just kidding. but yeah, so I interrupted earlier. We went on a bit of a tangent, but you were up to the point where you're getting to your team. Yeah. Were you West Coast or East Coast?
I went East Coast. I actually ended up going to SEAL Delivery Vehicle Team, which for your listeners, if they're not familiar with what that is, it's a mini submersible. It's basically a mini submarine, but it's wet. So you're diving the whole time you're in it. You're in this thing, but you're connected to air and you're wet. So it was great time. It was a very unique mission. Loved the work, loved the people that I worked with. But at the time, there just weren't as many missions for that particular team. So my first deployment, though I was assigned to SEAL Delivery Vehicle Team 2, SDV Team 2, I ended up getting attached to SEAL Team 10 while I was even a part of SDV Team 2, and ended up deploying to Afghanistan in 2005 for my first deployment. So went out there 2005, did that deployment, did a couple other stints to Afghanistan and Iraq between then and 2020. Did a quick pump off the coast of Somalia, and then some other interesting places in the world. Yeah, and got to see the world. So
somewhere off the coast of Somalia. Interesting way to put that. I don't want to speculate, so I won't ask. But cool. So overall, you felt that your career was great. You loved it, or do you wish you were an accountant?
No,
Jon kind of looks like he could be an accountant.
I do. Especially now, my eyes are getting old, man. The rest of me, and I've actually had to start wearing glasses, which I never thought I would wear. But when I'm sitting in front of a computer or on my phone, I have to wear glasses. So I guess age gets us all, man. Yeah. I enjoyed my career. I worked alongside some of the most phenomenal men and women this country has to offer. If I could do it all over again, I absolutely would. There's some things I would probably do different. But there's definitely aspects of it that I would do in a heartbeat again. What I actually miss, is that kind of sense of purpose, sense of mission that comes with being a military service member, and sense of camaraderie, sense of tribe. I miss that a lot. And, I seek it and find similar groups, but not quite the same. But I'll also tell you, as I did my deployments to Afghanistan, Iraq, and, off of Somalia, but as an officer, I actually didn't see as much combat as a lot of my brothers did, even fellow officers. And in a weird way, I think that caused me to feel almost inferior to some of my brothers in the SEAL teams, who had seen a lot of combat. Right, we train for combat. And, much like first responders, nurses in the ER, they train for that patient to come into the ER, right? Well, we train for combat. And when that nurse sees that patient come into the ER, they know they are on mission, and they do what they need to do. They ideally save that patient. And sure, they don't want anybody to come into the ER, but when they do, they're on mission. Well, it's just like us, that we train for special operations. You go through, you basically sacrifice a good portion of your life to training. Right. And there's a part of you that wants to put that training to work. Well, I honestly didn't see as much combat as some of my brothers, and that in a weird way caused me, I think I said an inferiority complex earlier, but really I think it was almost like an imposter syndrome. Like these guys were tougher and had seen more than I had, but yet I was still rising through the ranks as an officer, and I was in charge of them. Right. So it was kind of this weird dynamic, but I learned a lot from that. And I also learned a lot from those that had been in combat. And, I apply that in my leadership and as a leader today, in making sure that I'm compassionate with my people and know what it is they're experiencing, because, maybe they have trained to do something and they're not doing it. And that can be a tough pill to swallow, whether it's combat or whether it's something else. But yeah, it's, I hear that. And to be honest with you, I spent most of my career in special operations, and in my career deployed plenty, seen quote unquote combat, but same thing where I was never engaged in the big gunfire or anything like that. We went into plenty of houses, plenty of raids, helicopter raids. And for one reason or another, it's just never really transpired for me, which at the time you do feel that bit of inferiority. And as a matter of fact, at that period, when I first arrived to Iraq as fully qualified Green Beret, was in 2009, and things were pretty chill. We were out there doing police type actions. I was working with a SWAT team out east. And so we were going out and getting after it, but it was a low intensity type thing where, a lot of the guys who I was with felt the same way. They hadn't been really tested. Yeah. The way we were doing a lot. Don't get me wrong. We were doing heavy planning, right? Collection, training. Yeah, exactly. Like you mentioned, I went on plenty of raids, plenty of assaults, and they were good. I mean, the missions were good. We did what we did what we had planned to do. But and I know this probably for your non-military audience, this is going to sound a little sick and twisted. Mm-hmm. I'm not a warmonger. I'm not going out and trying to pick a fight, but I've trained for a fight. Mm-hmm. And, I don't want to say I would have liked to have seen one, but because I saw some. Would have reacted. I saw some, but I didn't. It wasn't as intense as some of my brothers experienced, and in a weird way that kind of you feel a little disappointed or a little bit like you got left out. But again, I'm I'm not a warmonger or anything like that.
It's just, same. Yeah. And very interesting at this time period of time that I was talking about, a kind of a senior member of our group joined our ODA, and he had been kind of known as kind of a bullet magnet.
Oh yeah.
One of those guys who goes out on raids or on missions, and it just always happens. Or, hey, what's up, man? Yeah, now we're going to get some. And he very wise looked at us and said, hey, I just want you all to know, all you young guys right now, I want you all to know that you can wish your ass into a firefight, but you can't wish your ass out of one. And,
that's sage advice.
I know some folks who wish and some folks who even talked their way into deployments where they knew that it would be pretty kinetic. Yeah. And very quickly, that was their last firefight. So, it's a horrible situation there. Obviously, they died doing what they loved, but it's one of those things. It's like it's a weird thing. Like you said, it's weird to talk to civilians about it. Like, oh, I want to get into action. I want to see the shit.
Yeah, exactly.
But at the same time, those bullets are real. Those bombs are real. Sometimes there's probably, I don't know, I'd guess near 1,000 members of our military in the last 22 years who didn't even know that they were in a firefight. Right. Yeah. Just that quick, boom. And they're gone.
Yeah.
So to kind of go back to that bit of imposter syndrome, I imagine you had mentioned that going up through the ranks, you might have asked yourself, did I earn this like some of my other peers? Maybe you even surpassed some of your peers that you went to school or buds with, but that eventually carries over, I think, until when you get out of the military. What was your experience getting out of the military? How'd you handle it, and where do you land initially?
Yeah. This could be a long story, but I'll try to keep it short. So I was on track so I put on 05 commander in the Navy, and I was tracking along, and my plan was to stay in for as long as I could, and as long as yeah, exactly, until it made sense for me to get out. And I had a daughter who ended up having some medical complications, and I ended up getting her enrolled in what we call the Exceptional Family Program. She was an exceptional family member, and I transferred from active duty. So this is, 2015 or something like that. I transferred from active duty to what we call in the Navy full-time support. And full-time support are the folks who are responsible for making sure the reserves are ready to be mobilized. So we actually fall under the reserve branch of the Navy, although we're serving full time. So it allowed me, because of my daughter's medical situation, it allowed me some more flexibility and allowed me to stay home more often. And I got selected to command a full-time support unit out in Salt Lake City, which is, ironic. Hey, everybody's like, well, the Navy, what do they have in Salt Lake City? Well, they've got a small reserve unit there. They've got small reserve units all over the country so that they can mobilize people in the case that they need them. Anyway, before I got out there, I'd left Virginia Beach area and heading to Salt Lake, and my sister was beat up on by her husband. So my former brother-in-law. And I called him, and he didn't answer because he's a coward, and he saw who was on the other end of the phone, and he didn't answer. So I sent him a barrage of texts, basically telling him that if he laid another hand on my sister, that I'd be paying a visit, in a little bit more colorful language. And he took those texts and he filed electronic harassment charges against me.
Oh, wow. This is getting dark.
Yeah, it got pretty dark pretty quick. So I told you, it's a long story. I'll try to keep it relatively short.
Let's draw it out.
Yeah. He brought me up on electronic harassment charges. NCIS got involved. The charges ended up getting dropped, but NCIS, because they were already involved, they told me it was like trying to unring a bell, which, you can't do, obviously. So they treated me like a total criminal, did like the cheek swab, did mug shots, and acted as though I'd killed somebody already. And I'm like, hey, you know what? You guys are getting involved in a family feud. This is ridiculous. Yeah. But apparently with special operations training, they expect
you are a lethal weapon.
They are, exactly. It's like the movies. It's the movies, right? Like, oh, okay, these hands are lethal weapons, but right. Yeah, whatever. I've watched too much Hollywood, but anyway. I got brought up on those, and I got relieved of my command qualification. So I didn't get to take command of that unit on Salt Lake, and I basically had to turn right around and go back to Virginia Beach. And so now I had this big black mark on my military record, even though I had served honorably all up until then, met all the wickets. So now I was pissed. Honestly, I was pissed, and they were like, "Hey, look." We basically did this to protect the Navy because we couldn't have this on the front page of the Navy Times that Navy SEAL threatens brother-in-law. But hey, okay, sure. Yeah. You got to protect the Navy. I understand that, but you also got to take care of your sailors. And I've considered that I'd sacrificed a good portion of my life. So, ended up getting brought up on these electronic harassment charges, getting my command qualification dropped. They're like, hey, look, we'll continue taking care of you. You can get a command qualification back in 3-4 years, and you can continue tracking along. I'm like, you know what? F that. I'm done. So now fast forward, it's 2019 or so, and I'm looking at getting out. And I guess it's actually 2018 now. It's middle of 2018. And one of my old bosses, an 06 that had been at SEAL Team 6, he pulled me aside. He's like, and he's out of the Navy now, this guy, when he's talking to me, he's like, look, I know you're angry. I know you want to get out. If you want to get out, you need to start thinking about what it is you want to do when your time is up. And so I had 2 years left. It was summer 2018. And I was like, boss, I got 2 years. I got plenty of time. He's like, no, that 2 years is going to go by real quick. And
online.
Yeah, man, it flew by. It flew by. But he was like, you need to figure out what it is you want to do. Start talking to people in different industries, figure out what industry you want to fall into, figure out what location you want to go. This is now an opportunity for you to form your life. You get to decide what it looks like. You get to decide where you want to live. You get to decide what it is you want to do. The Navy's not going to tell you. This is you. So I literally that night I went home and I sat down and I wrote down all the things that kind of appealed to me. I was like, okay, you know what? I want to make decent money. So let me look at commercial real estate. Let me look at private equity, look at finance, all these different things, kind of bright and shiny objects that are out there. And those are great jobs. Don't get me wrong. I think they're great jobs. But after a while, after interviewing people in those fields, I was like, you know what? This doesn't appeal to me. Mm-hmm. Even though it's decent money, there's not, it just doesn't jump out at me as something I'm passionate about. And at the same time, I was struggling with the military kind of treating me like they had. 2, the imposter syndrome that I mentioned. 3, there was some survivor guilt because I'd lost some good friends on the battlefield. And that was causing me a lot of anxiety and stress. And I started going to see a counselor who recommended meditation to me. And initially I kind of laughed at him. I was like, dude, I got some real stuff going on. I don't know about the snake oil meditation stuff that you're trying to sell.
10 minutes to sit around.
Yeah, exactly. You want me to sit still and do nothing for 30 minutes? No. Well, little did I know, I just didn't know enough about it. And then he kind of sat down with me and he's like, well, here's what meditation is. Here's what it does for you physiologically in your brain. Here's what it's going to allow you to do. It's going to allow you to perform better, focus better, kind of get through some of this depression, figure out what the story is that you're telling yourself so you can process it about this survivor guilt and this imposter syndrome. And I did. I started meditating and I started to be able to process all that. And so at one hand, I've got this, hey, what industry am I going to go into? And on the other hand, I'm learning about meditation. And then I realized, you know what, I can put these together and maybe create a career around it.
Interesting.
So I went through the Honor Foundation, which is the Special Operations Transition Foundation. It kind of started with the SEALs, but now it's with SEALs and Special Forces, the Raiders, Marine Raiders, and a lot of folks are going through this. The Honor Foundation also went through the Commit Foundation, and
we just had Michelle Olive on this
month. Yeah, Michelle's fantastic. I just texted her yesterday. She's fantastic.
Should be happy to hear you're talking to me.
Yeah, Michelle's fantastic. I love her. She's who got me into the Commit Foundation. Mm-hmm. Commit Foundation sent me out here to Colorado Springs for a workshop. And I had been out here before to Colorado Springs, but totally fell in love with it just during that 3 or 4 days that I was out here for a commit. And I was like, you know what? Okay, so now I know what I want to do. 2, I know where I want to live because my wife wanted to live out in Colorado anyway. Yeah. So I was like, Colorado Springs is it. Let's do it. So we made a plan and we acted on it. I mean, full on military planning, like did the at least what we call the Navy, the plan of action and milestones. We did that. Hey, we're like, okay, August of 2020, we want to be in Colorado Springs. Let's backwards plan from that. What do we need to do that? And the Commit Foundation, the Honor Foundation, American corporate partners, and some of the other transition programs that are out there, I participated in. I went through Dartmouth Business School, Tuck. They have Tuck Next Step. They have a 10-day program that's for transitioning service members and for transitioning elite athletes, which is kind of a unique mix. Yeah. You're like, hey, what do they have in common? But they have a lot in common. Yeah. These superstar athletes, Olympic athletes, professional football, basketball players, baseball, they've committed their life to this one thing. And now that one thing, I mean, they're getting older, right? Yeah. So they're not going to be as competitive. They're still fantastic people, but now they need to figure out what their next chapter is going to look like. Same thing that we're doing in the military. So, hey, what does our next chapter look like? Anyway, we ended up becoming best of friends. I've got gold medalists, best of friends. We got, former NBA players, best of friends. It's a wild mix. But anyway, went through all that, and then got, the last 6 months of my military career, got connected with what's called Skill Bridge. You've probably heard of that, Cliff. So Skill Bridge allows, during the last 6 months of your career, if the military allows you to do it, if they sign off on it, you can go and do an internship with a civilian organization and still get paid by the military. It's a fantastic deal. If you're listeners, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't have asked for more. So I actually went and did an internship with a nonprofit called Veterans Path. Veterans Path is a civilian organization, but they provide introduction to mindfulness and meditation to veterans, to help them find the word PATH is an acronym for peace, acceptance, transformation, and honor. And I worked with them after I got out of the military and did when the internship was done. I worked with them for another 6 months, and then ended up moving on for different reasons. And I became an entrepreneur. And now, like you mentioned in the intro, I'm a co-host for a podcast called Men Talking Mindfulness. And kind of the tagline is, what happens when a Navy SEAL commander and a hippie meditation teacher get together to talk about mindfulness? Well, we don't know. And we really don't. We have no idea what every show is going to look like. We just have a lot of fun, and we do it live. We broadcast it live. We've been doing it on LinkedIn, and we're going to be doing it on YouTube moving forward. But yeah, we've had some awesome guests, and we want to bring Bessel van der Kolk, one of your guests, your initial guest on our show. I'll see if I can put in a good word. There you go. That'd be great. So yeah, that's, I guess, the long and short of it. Now I live out in Colorado Springs. I've got 3 young kids. I've got a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 7-month-old. And, I'm out here with my beautiful bride, and we've got a small farm with horses and chickens and dogs and cats. Yeah. It's an adventure, but yeah, it's a new life. It's very interesting how you took a new experience, something that you hadn't even considered, and very quickly pivoted that into, hey, I could do this. Because in my mind, I'm thinking, wait a minute, how does somebody earn a living doing this? I'm still trying to figure that out. You stand on the corner and you open up your jacket and you're like, hey man, I got some mindfulness here. I got some meditation. What's going on? Well, heck, man, if I'd gotten in 5 or 6 years earlier, maybe I could have gotten in with Calm, the Calm app. Yeah, that's right. Like $1 billion industry. Mindfulness and meditation itself is a multi-billion-dollar industry every year. But I didn't get into, I didn't get into the Navy to make money. Right. I didn't get into this to make money. I'm a retired 05. So, I've got a safety net there with the pension. It's nice to have that safety net. Yeah, for sure. Hopefully you hurt yourself along the way well enough to make So I've got some disability coming in as well. So, that's helpful. But, it took a while to figure out how to make a living doing this. And, I do have, literally yesterday started a new job, an actual job, that has very little to do with mindfulness. I'm a business developer for 3D Media, which is a virtual reality, augmented reality company working with DoD. Very little to do with mindfulness there, though. I think long term, there's going to be some connections there. But I do the Men Talking Mindfulness podcast, which, as you know, podcasting is hard to make a living with. But I do some independent executive coaching that includes mindfulness and meditation. So I do that as one of my gigs. I work with a former Marine, or not former Marine. Sorry. All the Marines that are listening are going to say there's no such thing as a former Marine, right? So a Marine veteran, Teresa Larson, she's a doctor of physical therapy. And we have a program that's the Mindfulness and Movement Experience. It's 21 days that people learn about how the mind and body are connected. So there's some physical therapy that's tied in, and mindfulness, because the two are so inextricably intertwined. And then I work with My Steady Mind, which is another mindfulness teaching organization, or cognitive fitness is the way that we've termed it with My Steady Mind. And we teach a lot of first responders and healthcare workers mindfulness and meditation so they can deal with the stressors that are out there these days. So there is a living to be made. You just got to kind of figure it out with whether it's with mindfulness meditation or whether it's, some other thing that you're doing.
So want to just dive a little bit deeper into mindfulness. But first, I do want to mention, so obviously you're talking about your podcast. I listen listen live actually as often as I can. Sometimes I listen to the recordings. Everybody out there, I highly recommend giving it a look. When I first started this podcast, I started researching different podcasts by veterans and came across yours and loved it. It's you guys, Thanks, you guys really keep it light, and
we have a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun, and the fact that you do it live is ballsy. But
yeah, we've experienced some hiccups with that along the way. Like either the connection will drop, or one of us will say something that's like that was a little zinger.
We get canceled.
And we were at one point we had like the chat from our audience coming in. And, there's some great chat coming in, some great questions coming in from our audience. And then from YouTube, you'll get this like, hey, girls.
Oh, no.
Like, oh, come on, man. And so you're like, quick, let's hide that.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
But you also mentioned, a lot of different resources, the Honor Foundation, now the Special Operations Transition Foundation. Like that. The SOTF. Yeah. That's a really good, good little, what do you call it? Acronym?
Branding.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Anybody in special operations will look at it, but that stands for SOTF. I get it.
Yeah.
The Commit Foundation and Michelle Olive, the American Corporate Partners, SkillBridge. I bring all those up just to mention that you weren't afraid to get help. You weren't afraid to ask questions, find mentorship. Whereas a lot of us are a bit stubborn. You talk to, a lot of us have a tendency to talk to people with an idea of where you want that road to go, which I think is not conducive to growth. And I'm guilty of it for sure. During my transition, I had no idea what the heck was going on, but I found myself sometimes talking to people with kind of a hoping that it went down a certain path and then getting disappointed when it didn't, instead of just being open and listening to what they had to say. But talk about a little bit how, just that decision or that vulnerability of allowing yourself to get help and ask for help.
Well, I think, a lot of it started with that conversation that I had with my previous boss, who is still a mentor of mine to this day. When he got out, he got out as an 06, having worked with SEAL Team 6 and led over there and kind of assumed, hey, I'm kind of a gold. He was a Naval Academy grad, SEAL, Ranger. He'd gone through the Q course. He had done it all, right?
Yeah.
And, when you walk into a joint world, joint is spelled ARMY. And, when you walk in as a SEAL and you have a Ranger tab in the Special Forces, you instantly get respect. So he kind of assumed, hey, when he got out, that he was going to just land whatever job he wanted. And he did. He landed a great job out the gates, but it was a job that, again, he wasn't passionate about. And he told me that he didn't spend enough time on his transition as an 06. And told me that I should spend more time on mine. And that's why I spent that last 2 years really figuring out who I was, not who Commander Macaskill was,
right,
but who Jon Macaskill was, like outside of uniform, right? Like I knew at some point I was going to hang that uniform up and I was going to have to know who I was inside out. And I spent a lot of time doing some deep introspective work and figuring out what it was that I wanted to do. And that required me to ask for help. It required me to ask questions that were scary to ask, like, hey, what if I go out on my own and become an entrepreneur? And, some people had done that and failed miserably. And they're like, well, if you're prepared to fail, but learn from it, and you have some type, if you're able to get back up on your feet, then try it out. Yeah. Because if you don't fail, or if after your failures, because there's going to be plenty of failures along the way, if after your failures you can learn from that and grow from that, then take a chance on yourself. And if I hadn't ever asked those questions, I would have probably gone and done some other job and found myself terribly miserable, or doing something that I wasn't passionate about, and not doing what, I joined the military because I have a heart of service, because I wanted to serve others.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to do now. Still, I want to serve others in just a different capacity. And if I hadn't done that work, if I hadn't asked the questions, and learned about the different industries, then I wouldn't have found what I needed to do. So funny enough, the importance of asking for help is our first episode on Men Talking Mindfulness next season.
Nice.
So we're going to record that next Friday. So what'd you say? Today's January 4th. On January 14th, we're recording one on the importance of asking for help, because as a military member, it's tough to do. As a further refined, as a special operator,
right?
Like I got this. I can muscle through this. So I can, man up and figure it out on my own. And then using that term too, man up. I think as a man, a lot of the time it's tough for us to, or at least a masculine type.
Grab your sack.
Yeah.
That's right. Another way we've called it.
Yeah, exactly. It's tough for us to ask for help, because it feels as though by asking for help, you're showing a weakness.
Yeah.
When in fact, it's completely opposite. By being brave enough to ask for help, that takes a lot of guts. Yeah. That takes a lot of strength. So for me, in my opinion now, it has changed over time. For those who don't ask for help, those are the ones who are honestly, I don't want to say weak, but they're scared. There's a reason they're not asking for help. And then a lot of the time it's because they're scared. And if you can overcome that fear and ask anyway, that's being courageous. That's bravery. That's the very different definition of bravery, right? Is being scared and doing it anyway. How many times did we go on those raids? And in the movies, you see these SEALs and they're all hard and they're going out and like, I'm tough and brave and invincible. There were some freaking raids that were scary. Yeah. There were some assaults that were scary as hell. There was times when fast roping at night, 60 feet into some village that you have no idea what's down there. That's freaking scary.
Yeah.
But you do it anyway. And that's what's bravery. That's what bravery is. And so, manning up, womaning up, whatever you want to call it.
There's probably a
gender neutral term,
modern term now. Let's see. I don't know. We'll come up with it. But you're right. The fear of asking for help was something that I think is going away, but it was definitely a part of the culture. close your ears if you're sensitive to things. But, if you went and asked anybody for any help, I think even your medic, they would, diagnose you with acute vaginitis.
Yeah. Right.
And
yep,
you're like,
I remember those terms.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so all very, in a way, you look back and understand now that it is a bit of a toxic culture.
Yeah, it can be for sure.
And we thought that it was important to remain that way.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of think that by putting stuff out there like that, that you're helping toughen somebody up.
Yeah.
And it does. I mean, there is something to be said about figuring something out on your own, right? But there's also something to be said about why waste your time and energy reinventing the wheel? You don't have to figure everything out on your own. You can ask for help. You can ask from those who have been through it, down that road before. You can ask for help and save yourself time and energy. And then now that you've learned and you're standing on the shoulders of those who have gone before you, now you can reach down and help somebody else. And truly, I think that makes you better. It makes your team better. It makes your organization better.
Right.
For most of the things. Yeah. I mean, if you're coming to me and asking me, how to polish your boots or something stupid like that, you better figure that out. Right.
Yeah.
You can figure some things out on your own.
So John, so you listened to advice, you sought advice, you built a plan, you executed a plan, but something tells me that it didn't go off as you had planned, as most plans do. What are, real quickly here is what are some of the things that went wrong? I mean, even though you planned it all out and you probably had A+ effort in your execution of your transition plan, I'm sure things didn't go.
Yeah, man. I mean, that plan of action and milestones that I mentioned, right? Like, hey, putting a target on the calendar, August 2020, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to be doing. And then back planning from that plan of action and milestones, I literally had, 18 to 24 months planned out on there. And every month I looked at it and it changed. Okay. Hey, look, okay. So I missed this mark. I missed this goal. I missed this target. I didn't get into this program. I didn't do this or that, whatever. It changed every month and I reassessed, just like we do in the military. You've got your branches and sequels on every mission. You've got your contingency plans. That's what I did with that as I had contingency planning. What the ultimate goal was in August of 2020, my wife and I were going to be driving around in our RV for between 6 months and a year with 2 kids. We started driving around in our RV in July. And this is in 2020. COVID is still a thing. And, it was,
I didn't even think about that. Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we drove through some spots where they wouldn't allow us to go through. We went to some parks that we had planned to see and they wouldn't allow us in there. I ended up throwing my back out on the RV trip. And my wife's like, you threw your back out for 2 days. If you're down with COVID for 2 weeks or whatever, and I've got 2 little kids to wrangle in an RV, that's not going to work. So we ended up, driving around for about a month and then ended up parking the RV here in Colorado Springs and saying, okay, well, now we need to find a home.
Yeah.
So we found a home. So, and made that work. That was, not according to plan, but it worked out.
Right.
The nonprofit that I worked with, the nonprofit space wasn't exactly what I wanted to be working in. Still serving others is something, but the nonprofit space is, it's
sales.
It is. It can be sales. Exactly. Right. You gotta
raise money,
donations. And you've got to do all the fundraising. It's tough.
Yeah.
And that's not exactly the space that I wanted to work in, which I very much applaud those who work in that space. I'm not knocking that space at all. It's just, it was not what I thought it was. So that plan of me working in the nonprofit space for the rest of my life was like, okay, you know what, this is not quite right. So, now I'm in the entrepreneurial space and my plan changes daily. I've got this giant whiteboard over here with all sorts of stuff scribbled on it. And
right next to your 14th floor view out your window.
That's right. And now I've got to make some changes on this thing.
Zoom background.
Yeah, I've got the virtual background up. It's the virtual background is much more appealing than my real background.
Yeah, so contingency planning, I think, is really what's important. Putting all your eggs in a basket is always going to lead to some type of disappointment. And I know some people along the way who had a really good plan and didn't get into that program that they really wanted to, and had to find a different plan. But I think it worked out for them in the end. But in the short term, they're really disappointed with it. Having the grit.
Can't get married to your plan.
No, you can't. No, and I think it's important to have grit. Some people do just give up, unfortunately, and that's why we have a lot of issues involving mental health, PTSD, and not just PTSD. So I think this is a good point here is there's PTSD from trauma, either childhood or combat. But then there's also, it's like a different PTSD for those who are maybe didn't experience any trauma, but still are dealing with very similar situation. That's
man.
Like who am I?
Moral injury. Yeah. Moral injury from what you may have done on the battlefield, or maybe what you didn't do, because maybe you didn't step up when you thought that you should have. Yeah. Maybe you were, again, I don't want to use the word scared, but that's what jumped up is maybe you're too scared to step up when you probably should have.
Yeah.
Having the imposter syndrome, having survivor guilt. I mean, there's a whole list of things that kind of all fall under trauma, whether it's physical trauma, whether it's combat trauma, whether it's military sexual trauma, whether it's something from your childhood. It all falls under trauma of some form. We've all got something. Yes. Mentally that we're dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely. We're all human beings, regardless of
exactly
where we're at.
Yeah.
So let's transition that into talking about mindfulness. What is mindfulness? Okay. And how can not just veterans, but since it's a veteran podcast, let's talk about veterans, about how veterans specifically can use mindfulness to get through either some of the trauma or just the stressors of transitioning.
Yeah, sure. Great question, man. So a lot of the time you hear the term mindfulness, and the term mindfulness is used synonymously with meditation. Mm-hmm. Mindfulness is not meditation. Mindfulness can be meditation, or you can find mindfulness in a meditation, but mindfulness is nothing more than being present in the here and now, this present moment, physically and emotionally, without any judgment, right here, right now. So not thinking about what you did yesterday, not thinking about what's coming up later today or later this week. It's literally paying attention to what is happening in your body, physically and emotionally, right here and right now. It's a way of living. It's, what we call in the military or anywhere else, situational awareness. If you want to just use a different term that we're all familiar with is situational awareness, right? You're paying attention to what is going on around you and inside you, what is happening in your emotions and physically. It's a way of living. Meditation, on the other hand, is where you set aside time to do a formal practice of some sort, whether it's 2 minutes, whether it's 2 hours. The time of it the length of it doesn't matter. It's the fact that you set aside time to do it. And that's when you're focusing on some type of anchor. That anchor could be a body scan, like paying attention to your physical sensations of starting at the top of your head and working your way down to your toes, or vice versa. It could be your breath, focusing on the physical sensation of breathing. It could be a mantra. So you have some saying that you say over and over and over in your head, and you focus on that. The bottom line is you want to be focused on something, so that when your mind does wander off, because that's going to happen, when your mind wanders off, you can bring it back to that anchor. It's just like a ship, right? Your ship that is anchored is going to kind of circle around and do different things, but it's anchored in one spot the whole time.
Right.
That's what a meditation is. Now, where they overlap, mindfulness and meditation, is as you meditate, you're going to be more mindful in your life. You're going to be paying more attention to the present moment. You're going to be paying more attention to your physical and emotional feelings in the present moment. You're going to be paying more attention to your people around you, your friends, your family, your coworkers. So meditation helps your mindfulness. As you are more mindful, your meditation improves. So because you're meditating and you're being mindful, it's easier to focus on that anchor, again, whatever anchor that may be. So the two of them have some overlap and they support one another, but they're not one and the same. So I just always want to put that out so that your audience knows. And then the other thing I want to put out really fast is they're not religious in any shape, form, or fashion. Sure, there are religions that practice it more often than others, but they don't have the exclusive right to meditation. Right. Any particular religion doesn't have that cornered and say, okay, well, you have to be this religion in order to meditate.
Yeah.
That's not true. I have my own religious beliefs, and my meditation actually supports my religious beliefs. But if you're not religious at all, you can meditate. If you're super religious, you can meditate. It's not going to supplant or replace your religious beliefs.
Right.
Okay. So that all said, how some veterans or anyone else listening can get started. For veterans, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Veterans Path again. That's the nonprofit that I worked with before that teaches mindfulness and meditation to veterans. And they've actually started moving left of the line as far as transition. So it's not just those who have hung up the uniform already. They're offering mindfulness and meditation to transitioning service members as well, which is important. If Veterans Path isn't for you, there's, you can start just by simply downloading an app. That's how I started. I downloaded Insight Timer. There's tons of apps out there. Insight Timer, eMindful, Calm. There's tons of them. Waking Up, 10% Happier, some other ones. You can download an app. If an app isn't going to work for you, some of the things that I mentioned before, where I actually teach mindfulness and meditation through several programs. That's My Steady Mind. So mysteadymind.com. You can check that out for the cognitive fitness side of mindfulness. And then Movement RX. Movement RX is the program that myself and the Marine veteran run. The 21-day mindfulness and movement experience. That's another way that folks can get started. Now, those are not free, but they're fantastic programs. Sure, I'm biased because I helped to put them together, but the people who have been through them have had tremendous success and really helped themselves through mindfulness and meditation. Awesome. So, just to recap, the TLDR for you boomers out there. Right? That probably was too long. No. I thought that was actually a very succinct and great description of the two. And I've read a little bit about practice of meditation and mindfulness, and you just reminded me of what it is. And that metaphor of the anchor is I think important to remember. And, if I'm not playing devil's advocate, it's more like a realist question is for people out there is some people are kind of scatterbrained, or have just a lot on their mind. And so what do you tell people who are trying to practice meditation specifically, or even mindfulness, and they get frustrated because all of a sudden they're thinking about that job offer they got, or thinking about the interview coming up, or the kids' baseball game tomorrow while they're sitting there. Total life, man. Yeah. It's life. Is there something wrong with those people? Not at all. That's perfectly natural. Your mind is made to think thoughts just like your heart is made to beat, right? Right. You can't stop your mind from thinking thoughts. And those who think that meditation is you sitting down and just stopping your mind, That's not what it is. It's settling your mind. It's settling your nervous system, and it's settling your body. That's what meditation does for you. It doesn't stop your mind.
Yeah.
So when you sit down to meditate and you notice that your mind has wandered off from that anchor, it's like you mentioned, it's on the job offer, it's on the baseball game, it's on your to-do list, it's on fixing your car, it's on whatever. That's okay. That's perfectly natural. But don't hang on to those thoughts during meditation. When you notice that your mind has wandered off, bring it back to that anchor, whether it's your breath, whether it's the mantra, whether it's a body scan, whether it's whatever it may be, whatever works for you. Bring it back over and over and over, and be gentle with yourself. The thing is, a lot of time when people sit down to meditate and they notice their mind has wandered off, then they start cursing themselves out. They're like, well, I can't meditate. This is stupid. This is, I'm not one of those people who can meditate. And they convince themselves that they can't. They get frustrated and they're like, okay, well, meditation isn't for me. I did that.
Yeah.
When the counselor initially recommended meditation for me, I was like, well, I'm this big, bad, hairy, scary frog man. I'm going to go home and meditate for an hour. And, I meditated for, exactly. Right. Super competitive type A personality. We're going to do this.
Hey bro, how long did you meditate for?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Loser.
So I sat down for an hour and I meditated, and about 17 seconds into that meditation, my mind was on anything but the meditation. And I got pissed off. I was like, yeah, this shit doesn't work. And I went back to that doc and I'm like, hey man, meditation, I'm just not one of those people who can meditate. I'm too busy. My mind races. I got too much going on. I don't have enough time. He's like, okay, well, what did you do? I told him, hey, I sat down for an hour long meditation and made it about 17 seconds. He's like, well, hey, you're in pretty good shape, right? So how did you get to be in good shape? I was like, well, I worked at it. He's like, exactly. You didn't show up to the gym day one and bench press 300 pounds. You didn't show up to the starting line of a marathon without ever having run ever having run a mile. You worked your way up to that. So work your way up to an hour long meditation. Don't jump right into it. So I went back, the next day after eating some humble pie, and I did like a 2-minute meditation, and I was able to make it through that 2 minutes. Even during that 2 minutes, my mind wandered, but I realized it and I brought it back to the anchor 5, 6, 10 times through that 2 minutes. And I was okay. And I was like, all right. I feel pretty good. And with time, I did those 2-minute meditations several times a day. And with time, then I was able to do a 10-minute meditation. And with time, I was able to do a half-hour meditation. And then with time, I was able to do an hour long. I don't do an hour long every day.
Right.
I do 15 minutes in the morning and I do 15 minutes after lunch. That's my routine. If I can make that work, ideally, that's what I try to do. And I feel the benefits. And I got to come back to when you notice that your mind has wandered off and you come it back over and over and over, that's literally where the rewiring of your brain happens. So that's good. That's a good thing. Wow. That's like a mental push-up that you're doing.
Wow.
So you're rewiring your brain to be more focused because you've noticed that your mind has wandered off and you're coming back to that point of focus, that anchor. And as you do that over and over and over, you're literally rewiring, developing new neural pathways in your brain so that you can be more focused, which is why the meditation helps the mindfulness and why the mindfulness helps the meditation. But yeah, my tip to somebody trying to get started is start simple and start short. Don't jump into a super in-depth meditation. Don't jump into an hour-long meditation day one, because most likely you're going to get frustrated. And then if you do find yourself getting frustrated, take it easy on yourself. Give yourself some grace.
I like that.
And give yourself some space.
Give yourself some grace.
Yeah.
And as far as mindfulness, living mindfulness, is that how all right.
Yeah.
Living a mindful life in business and parenting. What are some tips? Let's say meditation is a part of my daily life or practice, but I just want to be in the moment. I've heard that there's certain tips, certain things like don't have your phone next to your bed.
That's a big one, man. I do not sleep with my phone in my bedroom. So many of us use our phones as our alarm clocks, and just having your phone next to you, it's been shown that having your phone next to your bed raises your anxiety levels. As your anxiety levels increase, you sleep more poorly. As you sleep more poorly, you become more tired. And now it's even harder and harder to be more mindful. It's harder to be in the moment with your friends, with your family, with your colleagues, whatever, with yourself. So tips to be more mindful if you're not going to sit down and practice meditation. But tips to be more mindful are: 1, don't sleep with this next to you. 2, so I held up my phone there for those who are listening. So don't sleep with that next to you. 2, first thing you do in the morning, don't grab your phone and start checking your notifications, your emails, your social media. Give yourself 5, 10, 15 minutes, grab a cup of coffee, a cup of water, and just be nice and slow. Just allow your body to transition from sleeping to being awake before you grab your phone and start checking everything else. Most of that crap that comes in through the night is just that. It's crap anyway. So don't worry about it.
It'll be there when you're done.
Yeah, it'll be there later. And then the next thing is mindful meals. If you do nothing else besides this is going to be tremendously helpful. So if we have 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, focus on that, your breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Don't wolf down a meal while you're checking your social media. I'm again holding up my phone for those who are listening. While you're listening to the news, while you're doing 10 other things. Stop everything, turn off your phone, put your phone aside, turn off your computer, and focus on the meal that's in front of you. Focus on your breakfast, noticing all the colors that are on your plate, all the senses that come into play in eating a meal. Do that again for lunch. Do that again for dinner. That in and of itself will make your life more fulfilling, and you will live in the present moment more and more often. And so when you are in the present moment, you can enjoy your family. Yeah. So like, again, I've got young kids. If I don't live mindfully, I'll be focused on, I'm an entrepreneur. If I'm not living mindfully, then I'll be thinking about how to, increase my business. I'll be thinking about my to-do list, my goals, blah, 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 instead of being focused on my beautiful kids that are in front of me. It'll allow me to be more present and focused with my colleagues. When I'm talking to people like yourself, I'm paying attention to the conversation. I'm paying attention to the questions that you're asking without trying to formulate an answer right off the bat.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a lot of the conversations that we have these days. People are thinking, 1, they're thinking about something else completely, or 2, they're thinking about what's my answer going to be to this statement. And they're not being present. So, and that can literally be changed by doing nothing else, by eating, besides eating 3 meals mindfully a day. So again, paying attention to all the senses that come into play in those mindful meals. Everything comes into play. You see what's on your plate. You smell the smells of you smell the scents of your food. Once you put that food in your mouth, your taste comes into play. There's obviously you feel the texture of your food, and you can hear it. I know that sounds weird, but you can hear yourself eating. Yeah. And then the emotional side of things, like, why am I eating? Am I eating because I'm upset? Am I eating because I'm bored? Am I eating for any other reason besides I want to? Like, I literally want to taste this delicious food in front of me, or I have to. If you're eating besides any one of those 2 reasons, then you're eating for the wrong reasons.
Interesting.
And that's, you have to take that into consideration. That can help you with your diets too. So, or your way of eating. So those are some tips for you, man, how to start meditating or live mindfully without meditation.
I love it. And, I think you could almost retitle it Tips to Becoming a More Likable Person. Right. Honestly, if you just practice mindfulness and you're in people who are present, you instantly recognize that trait in people. If you have any type of sensor on, you walk away from that conversation and you think, wow, that person was really present. That person was there. And so, speaking of being present, we've been present in this moment for a while now, not counting, yeah. But, John, I want to thank you for being on our podcast and want to encourage everybody to check out Men Talking Mindfulness. You won't regret it. And I'll put in the show notes all the different websites that you mentioned and organizations.
Right. Thanks, Cliff. I appreciate it.
Any parting words, sir?
No, thanks, brother. I appreciate what you're doing, and I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, well, let's hope this isn't the last time. So, all
right, man.
All right. Thank you.
Right. Take care, man.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Return to Base. That, of course, was Jon Macaskill, a former U.S. Navy SEAL and the co-host of the Men Talking Mindfulness Podcast. We learned a lot this week. A little bit about meditation, a little bit about mindfulness, and a lot about Jon's transition from the military to the civilian world. I took away personally the definition or the idea of being mindful, to be present in the moment. And I'm definitely going to try to incorporate some of the tips that Jon had mentioned in this podcast. Also, I don't know if any of you have tried meditation out there. I have tried, and it was pretty similar to what Jon was experiencing during his first attempt at meditation. My mind kept on wandering, and it was really good to hear Jon say, number one, don't be so hard on yourself. Give yourself some grace. And number two, it's natural for your mind to wander, and bringing it back to that anchor point is something that, if you remember, will really help. So I want to, again, thank Jon for being a guest. Thank him for spending as much time as he did with us, and want to encourage everybody to go check out the Men Talking Mindfulness podcast. You can find it in our show notes and on LinkedIn. And it's just a really great resource. And, if you have a drive coming up, or you are able to listen in to podcasts and stuff at work, I think it's a very insightful and intelligent podcast, and I really enjoy it. So I encourage everybody to go out there and give it a listen. You'll like it. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to this podcast on whatever podcast platform you like to listen to, and visit us at VeteranLife.com. And until next time, take it easy.